Dustaroo. Recently, Dead by Daylight got a massive inclusion of a new character into the Hall of Fame of Horror. This character being Chucky. And he may very well be the best overall killer that Dead by Daylight has ever created. And I'm gonna tell you why. This is how Dead by Daylight created a masterpiece. A little bit of context before we dive into this video. Chucky was, for many years, my dream Dead by Daylight license. It is the first film I ever remember watching in my life, right next to The Little Mermaid. Yes, my parents were not the most responsible with my media consumption. Like, seriously, did they even see these guys? Absolute nightmare kindling. But I thank them, as this film series started my passion for the horror genre and had a major influence in my life. So be aware there may be some bias shining through, but I also did watch Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween not long after as well, and I definitely have my issues with their adaptations. I feel very strongly after playing both as and against Chucky through the night, this is behavior's greatest achievement on so many levels. So many levels, in fact, that I have to break it down into several categories to truly show you why this is behavior at their best. We will talk about the three big categories: adaptation, gameplay, and innovation. Of course, they bleed into each other here or there, but these are the big three, and trust me, they are big, unlike Chucky himself.
A very small man can cast a very large shadow.
And they've done just that here.
You're dead. You hear me? Dead.
Disassembly of parts, body and otherwise, may be required.
Also, one last note. Masterpiece does not mean perfect. Perfection is an unattainable goal. As long as humans exist, some of them will find issues or dislike with something. Nothing can be without flaws, and Chucky's mere existence causes quite a few. But when all the factors come together in such a colorful and foul-mouthed wrapped package, can the title of Masterpiece be designated?
I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy slut!
We're talking adaptation. How true it is to the character and the nature of the films. Adaptation, 10 out of 10. No notes. Besides his cheeks being so bulged out, I'm not sure how Chucky contracted mumps when coming into the realm, but I guess things work differently for spiritually animated rubber. We have had a lot of good adaptations in the game. Characters who feel like they are the horror icon they represent. Bubba from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Hard to fail, just a guy swinging a chainsaw around, but by God, they did it. Not Freddy. Pinhead, for the most part. Not Freddy. Michael, if he was starved for a few weeks before coming to the realm. My big point being, when a character comes to the game, it usually feels like the best they could do with making that character fit into the gameplay formula, while trying to be accurate to the source material. Except Freddy. Chucky, though, is something we have not seen be this close to the actual character ever in this game, in my opinion. And the parts that are changed, like the pickup animations, are very unique and justifiable additions to the realm's settings. This is literally the body of Charles Lee Ray, Chucky, that died within the first few minutes of the first movie.
I'm gonna get you! No matter what!
Showing us that the entity did not rip the body of a good guy with Chucky in it to the realm, but actually took his soul and placed it back into an entity's version of a good guy. Cause the entity likes to do a little bit of trolling. Even in the endless afterlife, he can't escape being stuck inside a doll. Tough break, Chucky, tough break.
Ugly doll. Fuck you.
All of Chucky's powers and how they function are very similar to how it works in the movies, with some, should we say, magical enhancements. The charge he does is an action we've seen quite a few times throughout the series. Most of the time, Chucky uses his environment to get the jump on his opponents, but when out in the open, we see him knife out, charging as fast as his little feet can take him forward, and regularly see him jumping onto victims if he has no weapon. Of course, he could never move this fast in the main series, but I suppose it's always possible that the entity mixed him up a drug and energy drink cocktail. the footsteps. These are a very iconic part of Chucky's character, but just brought to its most extreme point. Chucky running around the room while being obstructed behind small furniture with only the sounds of pitter-patter of his little feet slapping the ground inflicts a growing sense of paranoia into his victims. So also having that be something that every survivor has to deal with while working on generators is the best of the best ways to make it an immersive and accurate part of his power. What truly makes this character the top of the tippity top when it comes to adaptation is the voice acting.
Superb acting, and really, let's face it, you're looking at him.
The unabashed full commitment to what sells Chucky as a horror icon. The constant swears and the use of the word I can't even say it in this context? You YouTube. Chucky is the most foul-mouthed, mocking horror character I can think of, and the sheer balls, capital B-A-L-L-S, to actually not skip on the amount of insults and genuine swears shocks me. The first killer to say and he says it quite often. They even got the official Chucky voice actor, the only one who has ever done the voice of Chucky. No, I don't know what that is. But if you ever bring it up to me again, I'm gonna f you up. I'm very happy with this trend that Dead by Daylight is going on with making killers able to speak in the trials. And Nick Cage, but mainly the killers.
Sadako, wait a minute, I live with Sadako. I mean, it's okay. Sorry.
While it is cool just having these horror icons straight up, for a lot of them, their voices and lines of dialogue are what make them as characters. Imagine bringing in a killer where their vocal taunts are the main pillar of what makes them loved, and just, I don't know, making them only laugh or something every once in a while. What a bad idea that would be, huh? One side note, after seeing Tiffany's skin in action, I did feel a little disappointed when compared to Chucky's constant and stinging digs. Like, don't get me wrong, Tiffany's still good, but there are a few voice lines that are not as smooth as Chucky's are, or feel a little bit clunky or unnatural. I still think it's a fantastic skin, but a masterpiece it is not. Safe to say you can't do as faithful of an adaptation in Dead by Daylight as Chucky, but a masterpiece needs to be well-rounded, strong in many aspects. And when it comes to gameplay, Chucky does not disappoint.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
So what makes Chucky a good killer and not just a fun one? When it comes to Dead by Daylight as it stands, we have a handful of types of killers. You have trap killers like Trapper, who places traps to cut off loops and maybe assist them later in chase further into the match. Stealth killers who obscure their location and terror radius through various means to get a sneak attack on an unaware survivor or give themselves the upper hand at various loops where vision is obstructed. Ranged killers who make their presence felt from a distance, like Huntress. Even if you drop a pallet and get some distance on them, if you're not watching yourself, that's a hit. And finally, the bread and butter of Dead by Daylight, the anti-loop killers. One that specifically helps you end chases faster, cuts loops shorter, or forces pallets down early. Killers like Clown, Nemesis, Alien. Ones that you would not classify as ranged killers exactly, but do have some extension to their power's range to hit over pallets, or windows, or even hinder survivors in some aspect from further away. Of course, not all killers fit into each one of these categories. Some are hybrids of two, and some take a little more from one side than the other. Then there are the subcategories that you just paste onto these archetypes, like map control, mobility. Well, Chucky is akin to a melting pot of playstyles, a multi-tool, a Swiss Army doll, if you will. He only has really one power he can use on command, but talk about versatility. We have Hidey-Ho mode.
Hidey-ho!
When you activate it, Chucky becomes undetectable for around 15 seconds, give or take, which gives him on-the-fly stealth, and when you're the same size as a totem, you can imagine it makes it pretty easy to sneak up on unsuspecting survivors, which can actually make him better than Ghostface at sneaking around sometimes. Sorry Ghosty, that's another L you have to hold. Also, while in Hidey-Ho mode, he can activate Slice and Dice. His charge functions a lot like a single Blight dash, if everything was just smeared in oil. The amount of loops you can just completely slide on to get an extremely fast and unpredictable hit is so filthy. So filthy that Bleach would have a tough time cleaning it up. You can also scrummage. Scamaz? Scrumdiddlyumptious? Let me read my notes. Chucky can scamper. He can scamper, which means he can vault under pallets almost as fast as Legion can, but can down you and do a slice and dice charge immediately. God, anyone playing on the game against Chucky, I honestly weep for your soul.
That's what you get when you play with dolls. I'm gonna break that flashlight over your freaking head.
But surprisingly, some of the biggest strengths in his kits are very subtle things that may not be immediately obvious with how impactful they can be. Chucky is short, but short does not really cover it. Imagine a hex totem running around and you're trying to loop it. That's Chucky. He can turn most safe loops on the map where you should have 100% vision on the killer into 50-50 loops, as he's hardly even visible half the time with his toddler-like height, especially when he activates Hidey-Ho, which turns off that red stain like a light switch. Some of you will say, well, you can see his footsteps when he's close enough, and that is true, but what else happens when Hidey-Ho activates? Oh yes, fake footsteps appear around you, throwing off your sound cues, and in some situations, making a choice of 50-50, where fake footsteps run at you from one side of the loop while Chucky runs at you from the other side, and you don't really have a good idea of who is who. Kind of like Old Spirit at some loops, but the diet version. And the third person is a much stronger addition than meets the eye. Survivors trying to spin around you to avoid a hit? Gone. Survivors hiding just out of sight next to you? Gone. Them blocking directly behind you or waiting to get an unhook? Gone. You can even see around corners of loops without giving out your position. Third person will change a ton of the dynamics with how survivors attempt to fight back and even bully a killer. Chucky has a little bit of everything he needs when it comes to chase. The ultimate hybrid between stealth and anti-loop. Now we come to the final category, and I wouldn't call Chucky a masterpiece if it was not a massive part of it. We have to talk about what Chucky means for the game and how he's a telltale sign of innovation coming to the future of Dead by Daylight. Chucky is the biggest departure from a traditional killer format we have ever seen. One of the biggest discourses, and ultimately the reason Chucky almost never got mentioned when speculation season came around, was the various technical and practical issues the killer would face being introduced as a chapter. He's too small! No one would want to play as Victor for an entire match. What powers could he possibly have? Voices from all over, from people with no perception of how it would be done. And if it was done, how could they make it work? Pressure and words from all around that I can't imagine it, so it doesn't fit and couldn't work. It's not worth trying. Even from the start, the devs talked about Chucky being something they didn't really want to look into due to these said issues. They gave in and felt the pressure, and they were doubting their ability to adapt this character. It wasn't even worth attempting. But sometimes, life is funny. Against all the odds and complications, the devs were given an opportunity, and they took the challenge. Not only did they make it work, they went the extra mile to just put every cherry on top of everything they had. For a long time, the devs have stuck to the rule of killers being in first person, mainly for balance, and that it was just easier to keep it that way. But with Chucky, that rule is officially dead. So what comes next? Not only did it work, it's already one of the best received chapters, pushing the idea that being creative and unique with your killers is going to be heavily rewarded by the community. I have for a long time thought Dead by Daylight as we know it could be more and should be more. We have the basic formula for what a killer should be, and now we're dipping our toes into the strange waters of what a killer could be. Over the next few years, we could see some completely experience-altering inclusions. But only if the almighty DVD code will allow it. It provides and it takes away. Dead by Daylight has had one of its best years ever. Out of the total 7 nearing 8. Besides Skull Merchant, for the most part, this has been a great year, with a lot of issues being addressed and the quality of life being drastically updated. And soon to be more on the way. They showed us that the game can still surprise and engage us, and will continue to do so. While not everything has or is perfect, by the standard we as DVD players are used to, This is behavior at their best. The future looks bright, and now it's on the devs to keep the lights burning. Thank you all for watching. My name is Dusteroo, and I will see you all real soon. Bye-bye. Like and subscribe.